Chuan is wearing it. There is a thin field of 10 acres, with a share of scholar achievements. A colorful rooster. Skilled at catching insects, able to protect the yard, fighting with wild dogs in the village, never losing a single battle. I can't change the midnight crowing, I want a stew. A red-backed big crab. Put it into the river to catch fish, keep the net in place, and it's another day of harvest. At least 8 liang, I want to stew it. Chuan felt that he could lie down now. What kind of scenery does it look like up to 90,000 miles? I also want to go and see it. The story of a craftsman with 2 little monsters, eating and drinking in the countryside, and occasionally going out to work. Keywords of the novel. No pop-up window on 90,000 miles, download the complete set of TXT on 90,000 miles, and read the latest chapters on 90,000 miles. Chapter 1. The Scholar is Going to Die Again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Scholar is going to die again, is that okay? Can't do it, my face is too red. I'm drinking, can't I? Can't do it or not. Look at your hands, they look like pliers. Human hands have 5 fingers. I'll wrap it up in my sleeve so that no one can see it. Can't do it, can't do it. Chuan lay in a dilapidated thatched cottage, listening to 2 little demons talking outside. One voice is very muffled, and the other voice is sharp and thin. Opening his eyes, he was Chuan, a migrant worker moving bricks on the construction site. The noon sun was scorching, and he was blinded by sweat. After opening his eyes, he was a scholar named Chuan, a weak scholar. The moonlight shone through the broken hole in the roof and onto the ground, creating a dense and white landscape. He was bound by these 2 little demons and was going to offer it to the Black Horn King. The Black Horn King is delicious. It is said that a scholar is the most delicious, with delicate skin and tender flesh, carrying the fragrance of books, and must be steamed with water to eat. He was originally timid, but when he heard that monsters were eating people, he was scared out of his wits. He rolled his eyes and passed out. The 2 little demons who bound him panicked. What should we do? Dead meat is not delicious. Catch another scholar. Yunxiao Township is located in a remote area, with a radius of 100 miles. Chuan is the only poor scholar who lives alone and is easy to bully. After spending half a day together, the 2 little demons finally came up with a good solution. To hire a doctor for the scholar, prescribe 2 patches of medicine, breathe a sigh of relief, and wait until they meet the Black Horn King before dying. But a new question arises. How can the doctor be hired? The red-faced man holding 2 pairs of big pliers was a crab spirit. He said in a muffled voice, I wrapped the pliers and pretended to be disabled, saying that someone at home is too sick to get up. So, why don't we invite the doctor here? Can't do it, can't do it. At the feet of the red-faced man, the big rooster shaking its head and jumping back and forth is another little demon. A rooster's spirit is shallow and will not transform into a human yet. But picking on the nitpick, he said one after another, it's not possible. I've seen people with disabled hands before, not like you. The doctor can see through it at a glance. Neither this nor that, the crab spirit has lost patience. It's done. Don't look for a doctor anymore. Leave this scholar here and let him fend for himself. Don't go to the Black Horn King's place either. You go back to your straw hut, I'll go to my stone cave. Upon hearing this, the rooster spirit pecked at the leg of the crab spirit's pants with a sharp tongue and said, if we don't succeed, if we don't worship the Black Horn King, if we don't obtain the cultivation method, if we can't obtain the fortune, if we can't increase our lifespan, and after 3 to 5 years, it will turn into a handful of dust. Aren't we wasting our spiritual intelligence? At that point, what's the difference between us and the fighting roosters and the crabs in the mud? The crab spirit was once again persuaded. He held his breath and transformed again, finally turning the pliers into hands. Although all four fingers, except for the thumb, cannot be opened together, at least the back of the hand, wrist, and fingers are all intact. After shaking left and right to check, the rooster nodded reluctantly and said, "It's done. You go find the doctor now, and I'll be watching the scholar here." Before the rooster could finish his speech, he suddenly felt something was wrong. He twisted his neck and saw Chuan standing by the door, quietly watching them. Shortly after waking up, Chuan propped up his floating body and moved to the door. He wanted to see how terrifying those two little demons were, to the extent that they could scare their original bodies to death. At first glance, I was greatly disappointed. The rooster spirit did not grow 9 chicken heads or 10 chicken feet, and there were no hundreds of eyes dripping on its wings. It could only speak and was slightly larger than an ordinary rooster. The refined man made of crabs even looks quite simple and honest. Chuan sighed, his original courage was too weak. After staring at each other for a long time, one person and two demons, the rooster spirit spoke up and broke the silence. He said, very good, very good. You don't need to find a doctor, scholar. Come with us on the road." Chuan weakly supported the door and said, "I'm hungry. If I don't eat anything more, I'll starve to death." When he pronounced the word death, he deliberately emphasized his tone. "Starving to death. Dead. You can't die." The rooster spirit immediately reacted and said, "Third brother, look at him, I'll go get him something to eat." The crab spirit responded and took 2 big steps before reaching Chuan's side. Then, Chuan saw the rooster spirit, spreading its wings and fluttering low. In the blink of an eye, he rushed into the nearby rice field and disappeared from sight. Chuan pondered, wouldn't this rooster spirit peck a few earthworms for himself to eat? While thinking, he took a few steps back into the room and sat down on the thatched pile. "Rest your feet. This body is too weak. After standing for a while, my limbs become sore, and I feel dizzy. The crab spirit followed closely behind, with a wary expression on its face. Chuan said upon seeing the situation, "Brother Crab, why don't you sit down and rest? As a scholar with no strength to bind a chicken, I am hungry. Even if I escape, how far can I escape?" The crab listened carefully to Chuan's words and found them very reasonable. So he sat opposite Chuan, his eyes bright, his body tense, and ready to go. The hand that was finally transformed back into pliers. Whenever Chuan had any misconduct, he would use pliers to take him down. Chuan raised his head, "The moon is really round?" He asked, "Brother Crab, I don't know what to call him." The crab spirit said, "My name is Bien San. Where are the rooster brothers?" "Gong air. So you should have another big brother, right?" "Yes, Wu Da." "Where is he?" "Once, my second brother drank too much alcohol and pecked my eldest brother to death." "Is Wu Da a centipede spirit?" Chuan pondered over the naming convention of these two little demons, and suddenly felt that the other 3 were quite sincere. As long as he doesn't run, say whatever he asks. So he asked, "When did you become sperm?" "In spring." "After becoming sperm, are you going to eat people?" "I haven't eaten it before." "Do you know any female fairies?" In this rambling chat, Pang San talked to Chuan about many things. For example, although Gong Air cannot transform, he is the oldest and understands the most. He is old and refined. For example, the demon born in the 3rd place only had a few short months, and he became a sperm after biting a stone in a pond. For example, the Black Horn King they are going to seek refuge with is a black rhinoceros spirit, said to have an extraordinary background. 10 years ago, he occupied a Xianshui mountain hundreds of miles away, claiming to be the Black Horn King, widely accepting his disciples and grandchildren, and exuding a majestic aura. The government has organized multiple rounds of manpower encirclement and suppression, but has been defeated repeatedly and returned home. During the conversation, Gong Air came back. He held his neck high, his wings wrapped around a food box, and his paws crisscrossed as he walked forward. As he walked up to Li Chuan's noodles, he put down his food box and said in a sharp voice, "Eat quickly, eat quickly. It's good to hurry after finishing." When Li Chuan opened the food box, he saw that there were 2 plates on the top, one was steamed duck, the other was fish, and the other was 2 mantou and a bowl of egg soup on the bottom. I don't know from which household this public servant was stolen. Smelling the aroma, Li Chuan became even hungrier. He grabbed mantou in one hand and chopsticks in the other, and began to eat. The wind swept through the clouds. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Scholar, he will not die. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Scholar, he will not die. After he swallowed the last bite of the duck, Gong Er began to urge him again, hurry up, it's easy to go. It's easy to go. Li Chuan suddenly shook his hand and his chopsticks fell to the ground. He hugged his stomach and twisted his facial features. This food is poisonous. While howling, he rolled to the ground. Impossible. Gong Er firmly denied, I took this meal from Zhang Yuan's kitchen outside. How could it be poisonous? Mr. Zhang. It sounds a bit familiar to me. Li Chuan searched in his memory. Zhang Yuanwei is a wealthy family in Yunqiao Township. He is kind and generous, enjoys making friends with scholars, and often invites his original self to his home for meals. I was originally very noble, and on the grounds of focusing on studying at home, I didn't go to 9 out of 10 invitations. Li Chuan's heart aches like a ring. I don't eat actively, I deserve to be scared to death by monsters. Gong Er and Bien San looked at Li Chuan's expression of genuine pain and were also somewhat uncertain. Is this food really poisonous? This scholar won't be poisoned to death, will he? Dead? No way. Before seeing the Black Horn King, the scholar cannot die. What should we do? The third person asked the second person, did you take the overnight meal? Gong Er suddenly flew up to the table and said, it's impossible. I looked at the one that just came out of the pot and put it in the food box. After finishing his words, Gong Er suddenly thought of something. His eyes were wide open and his eyes were about to crack. Someone is going to harm Mr. Zhang. As soon as Li Chuan finished speaking, he saw the rooster spirit's wings vigorously flapping and rushing out of the door. Between breaths, it bounced back. Gong Er raised his tail and said in a sharp voice, Bien San, you've tied up the scholar. Our troops are divided into 2 routes. You go find the doctor to treat the scholar, and I'll go to Zhang Yuanwei's house. As soon as he finished speaking, Ting let out a sound and Gong Er left again. Li Chuan looked at the situation and realized that this rooster spirit was probably a chicken from Zhang Yuanwei's family. No wonder the kitchen feels so smooth. A slight rustling sound came in my ear. As soon as he turned around, he saw Bien San holding up 2 pliers, with a hemp rope pulled between them. Despite Li Chuan's plea for mercy and screams, he tied him tightly and then tied him to the legs of the table. After dealing with Li Chuan, Bien San worked hard to change several times, sometimes missing his palm, sometimes hanging his 5 fingers upside down, and finally became one. It looked like he was in human hands, and Bien San said to Li Chuan, Scholar, the doctor will come soon. Don't speak recklessly. Otherwise, both you and the doctor will die. Before Li Chuan could respond, Bien San spoke harshly and walked out the door. Pounce and the door closed. Li Chuan is the only one left in the thatched cottage. Li Chuan waited for a while, twisted a few times, leaving some gaps between his arm and the hemp rope, then I reached up with my arm and reached for the knot. After pulling it a few times, the knot unraveled. Li Chuan stood up, slapped the hemp rope on the ground, walked out of the thatched cottage, circled around the edge of the field, and squatted down. Stomach pain is real. It is estimated that scholar Li Chuan eats too little oil and water in his daily life, and the ducks are too fat, which makes it difficult for his stomach and intestines to adapt for a while, so he has a stomachache. The night wind blew in waves on my face. Chuan lifted his head and looked at the round moon and large twinkling stars adorned on the night sky. He finally had some sense of reality. He wore it. Wearing an ancient world with fairies and immortals. In modern times, Chuan lived relatively well. My family runs a small restaurant, and my parents are busy from morning till night. Big brother is honest and reliable. When he has free time, he helps in the store and finds a local girlfriend. The wedding is scheduled for October this year. My younger brother is talented and can study. He won the top spot in the city's college entrance examination, and the prize money given by the city and town is almost enough for his 4-year tuition. Only he was lazy and greedy, quite clever, but couldn't read well. He memorized a song called Goose 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 for a month but couldn't come out. Together with a group of fox friends and dog friends, I learned a lot of unconventional ways. His parents were afraid that he would take a wrong path, so they sent him to the army. After 2 years as a soldier, they started working with their uncle on the construction site. I didn't expect to wear it. Let's wear it now. If there's a big brother or younger brother taking care of his parents, he might even lose a few strands of white hair. After clearing his stomach, Chuan lifted his pants and used the moonlight to distinguish the direction. Just as he was about to leave, he heard a familiar thumping sound. He instinctively dodged towards the side, and then a robust colorful rooster collided with him. Wings awkwardly brushed against his face. Gong Air fell to the ground, jumping and shouting, "You're such a scholar, how dare you deceive me?" Chuan dodged while defending, "No, no, no. If I want to deceive you, why don't I run, but wait behind the house? You're lying. You're lying. I saw the rope on the ground. If you're not trying to escape, why do you have to break free from the rope?" Upon hearing Gong Air's questioning, Chuan's face turned straight and he said, "I am a scholar, a noble scholar. How can a scholar show respect on the spot inside the house? I might as well die then. Cannot die. Scholar cannot die." Upon hearing the word death, Gong Air immediately screamed in a sharp voice. Chuan Dao said, "So I broke free from the rope with all my might." Fortunately, Brother Pang didn't tie it very firmly, and after grinding it a few times on the ground, it scattered. Otherwise, I would have to bite my tongue and commit suicide. Gong Air nodded his chicken head up and down, feeling relieved. Fortunately, he said so. Chuan tentatively asked, "Brother Gong, I don't know what's going on outside of Zhang. I see this poison, it doesn't look like a deadly poison like arsenic, it looks more like a laxative." Gong Air replied, "I arrived at Zhang Yuany's house, and the food had already been placed on the table. I had to sweep all of it to the ground, and then went to the kitchen to make a scene. Finally, I managed to get it done. Washed, wasted." Chuan felt heartbroken and made up his mind to go to Zhang Yuany's house to grab more food after getting away. Second brother, the scholar has escaped." The voice of the third party came from afar. Gong Air and Chuan walked around to the front of the house and saw the third person standing by the door. Behind him, a man with a medicine box was tiptoeing out. "I think it's the doctor who was invited." Seeing the rooster and Chuan walking over, the doctor's eyes flashed with fear, and he missed his step and fell to the ground. Upon hearing the sound, Bien San turned around and saw the doctor using both hands and feet, getting up and ignoring the medicine box that had fallen to the ground. He shouted, "There's a fairy," while running deep into the field. Just as Bien San was about to chase, Chuan said, "Stop chasing, I'm already fine. This doctor also looks timid. Don't be scared to death like his original body, then he will do evil." But Bien San had other concerns. He said to Gong Air, "Second brother, did the doctor see that we are monsters? What should we do?" Gong Air immediately said, "Then let's hurry up and get on the road, scholar. Let's go." Li Chuan knew that any excuses he made this time were useless. So one chicken, one person, and one crab rushed on their way under the moonlight. Gong Er took the lead, and the third hall next to him guarded against Li Chuan's escape. As Li Chuan walked, he felt his feet too heavy to lift up, his body weak and his breath short. His speed slowed down, and he even stopped and sighed. So Gong Er stopped and asked, "Scholar, what's wrong with you?" "There is a little bit of saved manuscript, not much. Once it's posted, it will be finished writing. I think this idea is very interesting, but the writing difficulty is indeed beyond my own ability. I can do whatever I can, just do my best." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Scholar, please stay. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Scholar, please stay. Li Chuan said, "I spend a lot of time reading and my eyesight is not good. I can still see things during the day, but I can't see clearly at night. Just now, under the moonlight, I was able to barely catch up, but now the dark clouds cover the moon, and the darkness before my eyes is so vast that I can't walk anymore." Gong Er raised his head and the moon indeed hid in the clouds. It was pitch black. Li Chuan continued, "Brother Gong and Brother Pang, we have already walked a long way. Even if the doctor calls someone, we won't be able to catch up with us. How about we rest first and wait for the day before rushing?" "No, no, no, no," Gong Er rejected Li Chuan's proposal. "I can't transform into an adult yet. My third brother's transformation technique also has many flaws. He can walk at night but is easy to break during the day." Li Chuan suggested again, "Then in the daytime, we'll hire a sedan chair and find a jar to buy a basket. Brother Pang will accept the changes and rest in the jar. Brother Gong will be more aggrieved. What do you think of the basket?" Gong Er shook his head and said, "It's not possible. We have a total of 3 taels of silver on us, and hiring a sedan chair costs 1 tael." As he spoke, Gong Er reacted and said, "You scholar, are you deceiving us into walking in the daytime and asking for help?" Li Chuan exclaimed, "I am a scholar, how could I deceive people?" After arguing for half a day, the third person said, "Let me carry you on my back." Li Chuan was about to refuse when he saw a burst of smoke and a crab appeared in front of him. The crab shook its pliers, then its body grew one more circle, until it could allow Li Chuan to sit on it. Li Chuanmu climbed onto the crab shell with a face on his face. 30 pounds, definitely 30 pounds, a big crab weighing 30 pounds. Bien San swung his crab legs and crawled rapidly in the field, then darted forward for a long distance in the blink of an eye. The moon emerged from the clouds. The colorful rooster running, the green shell crab crawling horizontally, and the scholar sitting on the crab shell pulled out long shadows on the field. 1 person and 2 demons rested during the day and hurried on at night, and soon their journey was halfway through. At noon, the sun was shining brightly. Li Chuan rests under a big banyan tree. Gong Er went to find food for him, while Bien San was responsible for guarding him. Sitting tired, I walked around the banyan tree twice, then slowly performed half of the radio gymnastics, and then sat on the ground feeling dizzy and panting. This body is also too weak. In the memory of scholar Li Chuan, his body was still passable. He was just unlucky and fell ill the day before the hospital trial, coughing a bit. On the day of the hospital trial, the symptoms worsened, the body became hot, and breathing was heavy. The exam room was not only poorly ventilated, but also filled with the smell of feces and urine. I struggled to finish answering the papers, but as soon as I left the room, the person fainted. I fainted for 3 days. After being rescued, although he saved his life, he had already suffered fundamental injuries. Fortunately, the results of the hospital trial were okay. We hired students and earned an extra 12 taels of income in a year, barely able to afford medicine. So scholar Li Chuan began to focus on studying, but he didn't expect to be scared to death by the 2 little demons. Li Chuan can clearly know which memories belong to him and which memories belong to the scholar Li Chuan. The memory of scholar Li Chuan is like a locked box, neatly stored inside. When opened, he can immediately find any information he wants to know. But as long as I don't think about it, the memory of scholar Li Chuan lies quietly in the corner, as if it doesn't exist. Li Chuan thought and glanced at the other three. At this moment, Bien San was hiding in the shade, motionless. The crab shell is a bit dry. The sun was slightly off, and the third person remained motionless. Did you sleep or faint? What does it look like for a crab to sleep? Li Chuan thought about the speed at which the crabs crawled horizontally at night. Forget it, the crabs that had fainted might have run faster than his broken body. I have to think of other ways. We can't go through it all. After only a few meals, it becomes a monster dish, right? Gong Er will be back soon. He threw 2 meat patties to Li Chuan and said, eat quickly, go to sleep quickly. Don't wait until night. Sometimes you say you feel dizzy, sometimes you say you have leg pain, delaying your journey. Li Chuan took a bite of the cake, but it was still hot. After taking 2 bites, he said, the sun is too hot and I'm thirsty. Could you please go find some water to drink, brother Gong? Gong Er impatiently stepped on his paw and said, you scholar, why are you so difficult to serve? You want to eat and drink, can't you just say it all at once? I just walked to the market, and before I could rest, you wanted to drink again. Li Chuan quickly explained, originally, I wasn't thirsty. It was because I took 2 bites of cake and felt choked, that I wanted to drink water. He glanced at the motionless third person again and said, I think Brother Pang is also thirsty. Gong Er also noticed the dry lines on the crab shells of the other 3. Bubble water, third brother can feel more comfortable. Gong Er walked to the side of San and flapped his wings twice. After waking him up, he asked, can you smell it? Which direction is there water vapor? Upon hearing Gong Er's question, Bien San became energized. The 2 crabs twisted their eyes and said, in the southeast direction, it's not far from here, maybe it's a stream. Gong Er said, I'm leaving now. The scholar, hurry up and put on his shell. After drinking water, go to bed quickly. Don't delay your journey at night. As he spoke, Bien San's body grew larger, and Li Chuan climbed up with familiarity, holding on to his 2 whiskers and sitting firmly. The wind and lightning raced all the way. Soon, a small stream appeared not far away. But Gong Er suddenly stopped, and Bien San also stopped. There was a red-haired fox sitting on a stone by the creek, holding a book in its hand. The fox shook its head in the sunlight, looking at it with great fascination. It's a fox demon. Or the fox demon who only took the books upside down. Li Chuan found that Gong Er and Bien San were both hiding. Gong Er lowered his body and hid in the nearby bushes. Bien San also moved the crab's feet slowly, carrying Li Chuan to climb behind a pile of rocks. Hold your breath and concentrate. Seeing the frightened appearance of Gong Er and Bien San, Li Chuan understood that the strength of this fox demon must be above both of them, and not even a bit strong. Surrounded by dense forests. In the past few days, Li Chuan has also made some rough guesses about the strength of Gong Er and Bien San in his heart. Husband and rooster's feathers are as hard as gold and stone, and their speed and strength are several times that of ordinary roosters. They can fly 20 to 30 meters low. Unable to change, unable to spell. Crab Essence 3, although able to change size and transform into human form, has no other special features except for a harder shell, strong strength, and fast speed. So they had to take him, a scholar, to join the Black Horn King in order to cultivate the method and plan a future. Li Chuan sighed as he thought about it. If there are 2 or 3 strong men with the same strength as he did in his previous life, it's enough. With another guy who can handle it, we'll probably be able to solve these 2 little demons. Now the red-haired fox by the stream reads like a madman. The strength of this fox should be far superior to that of Gong'er. Otherwise, make some noise and let the three fairies fight, maybe he will have a chance to escape. While pondering, a flying sword broke through the air and headed towards the red-haired fox. The sword hilt is adorned with a huge red gemstone, which is very dazzling. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Scholar, read it again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Scholar, read it again. The red-haired fox sensed a crisis, shook off the book, jumped to the side, and the flying sword brushed against the fox's head. A bundle of blood accompanied half of its ear fell into the grass. The red-haired fox took advantage of the swirling sword and ran towards the dense forest, disappearing after a few drops. The flying sword swayed and hovered in mid-air, roaring towards the distance. One person and two demons held their breath and waited for a while. After confirming that neither the fox nor the flying sword were nearby, Gong'er lowered his voice and said to Chuan, "Scholar, do you still want to drink water? Hurry up, we'll drink and leave here." Chuan quickly said, "What you want is what you want. How about I go alone? I'll come back after drinking." The third pair of pliers scratched the ground a few times. Although Gong'er felt that it was not suitable to stay here for a long time, he thought that the fox had already run away. Since Fei Jian was chasing the fox, it was impossible for him to be still nearby. Therefore, he made a decision and said, "Let's go together." At the stream, Chuan crouched down. He tried to ignore the blood stains on the stones and half of the fox's ear in the grass. Reach out and drink water. The stream water is clear and sweet, providing a refreshing sensation when entering the stomach. After washing my face again, I couldn't help but feel refreshed. Half of the body was soaking in water, spitting bubbles, and the dry lines seemed to have become lighter. Chuan glanced at a book dropped by a fox on one side, and one corner of it was soaked in water. He reached out to pick up the book. When my hand touched the book, a golden light flashed before my eyes. Chuan blinked his eyes twice and saw the golden sunlight shining on the stream. Without hesitation, he put the book in his pocket. Seeing that Chuan had finished drinking water, Gong'er began to urge him again, all right, let's quickly find a place to rest and sleep. We still have to hurry at night." After leaving the stream, one person and two demons found a cool place to rest. At dusk, a cool breeze arose and dense clouds filled the sky. A faint raindrop penetrated his neck, and Chuan shuddered. He called out to Gong'er, who was walking forward, "Brother Gong, it's raining. Let's quickly find a place to take shelter." Gong'er didn't stop his steps, just turned his head and gave him a glance, and sharply rejected, saying, "Nonsense, no rain, no rain. It's going to get bigger," he said as he rolled his eyes and felt the pervasive moisture in the air. Chuan quickly continued to persuade, "Brother Gong, I'm not afraid of rushing. I'm sitting on Brother Pang and don't need to exert any strength to get out on my own. What I'm afraid of is getting caught in the rain, catching a cold, or getting sick. What should I do?" Upon hearing the word sick, Gong'er gave a wake-up call and said, "You can't get sick. You can't die. It's just that Gong'er and Bien San don't know where to take shelter from the rain. They could only accelerate their pace, keep moving forward and searching until night had completely fallen before they could see a dilapidated temple. As soon as one person and two demons entered the dilapidated temple, they heard a loud roar as white light exploded above the dense forest. Raindrops the size of soybeans fell down. Chuan slid down from the crab shell, found a dry corner to sit down, took out the leftover meat patties from noon and took a few bites. He looked up and suddenly realized that the other three were missing. Chuan asked Gong'er, "Where has Brother Pang gone?" Gong'er pointed his tail outside and said, "He went to soak in the water." That's right, crabs are not afraid of getting wet. Through the lightning, Chuan saw clearly the layout of the dilapidated temple. There is a damaged deity statue in the middle, estimated to be a land god, there are some traces of murals left on the surrounding walls, all peeling off and indistinguishable. It seems that some sound has penetrated through the sound of rain. Li Chuan turned his head and saw a person holding a broken umbrella, folding their feet and moving into the temple. The person trembled and collected the umbrella, saying, "What a heavy rain." Then she seemed to see Li Chuan and Gong Er hiding in the corner. She looked up and took out a fire folder from her backpack, which ignited. Li Chuan and Gong Er saw her clearly. An old woman with gray hair. Gong Er shook his hair and relaxed his body. Li Chuan was also somewhat disappointed in his heart. After seeing Li Chuan, the old woman said, "Young master, please look for firewood in the temple and make a fire." Upon hearing this, Li Chuan looked around under the light of the fire. There was a broken stool next to the back door, perhaps it could be used as firewood. He brought the stool to the old woman's side, and the two of them worked together to dismantle the stool. The old woman looked trembling, but her strength was greater than that of Li Chuan. Her nails were black and long, like hooks. After the fire started, the old woman set aside her backpack and noticed Gong Er standing in the corner. Her eyes lit up and she exclaimed, "What a mighty rooster." Upon hearing this, Gong Er turned around and lowered his head, pecking at the ground repeatedly. The old woman chuckled twice and sat down by the fire. Li Chuan also sat down. The fire caught fire, and my body gradually warmed up. The old woman asked him, later, "Where are you from?" Li Chuan replied, "I am from Yunxiao Township." The old woman asked, "Oh, Yunxiao Township, where did I go when I was a child?" "Where are you going?" Li Chuan noticed that Gong Er had glanced at him, so he said, "Visit an elder's house." The two of them chatted aimlessly, but the old woman looked very tired and gradually stopped talking. The long night is long. After listening to the sound of rain for a while, Li Chuan felt that it would rain for at least a while, so he took out the book he had picked up by the stream and read the words on it under the fire. Fortunately, there is the memory of scholar Li Chuan, who can recognize 5 or 6 out of 10 characters. The book is called 1-10, and he read it with a few lines, seemingly explaining how to add patterns and decorations. Li Chuan secretly laughed in his heart that foxes cannot read and treat a reference book as a treasure. Looking dizzy with half understanding, Li Chuan flipped through the book. There were no words in the latter half of the book, only pictures, from simple to complex, perhaps just decorative patterns. Closing the book, Li Chuan casually glanced in the direction of the old woman. The old woman breathed heavily and occasionally snored, indicating that she was asleep. Suddenly, Li Chuan's pupils contracted, and he controlled his expression and turned his head away. He saw that the right half of the old woman's ear was gone. In my heart, I flipped over a wall and fell into the sea, but on my face, I didn't show any signs. Based on his decades of accumulation in TV dramas and novels, he can be certain that the old woman in front of him is the red-haired fox by the creek during the day, who came for the 1-10 in his hand. How did she find them? What is her purpose? If it's just a book, just give it to her. But if she wants to silence, Li Chuan thought about the performance of Gong Er Bien San in the daytime, and if they were one person and 2 demons combined, they probably wouldn't be her opponents. Gong Er and Bien San didn't even realize she was a demon. So Li Chuan found the most difficult passage to read from his memory, and while shaking the book, he stuttered and memorized it. After memorizing for a while, I did hear the old woman ask, "Youngster, are you reading the words from this book?" End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Scholar, Cannot Die. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Scholar, Cannot Die. After finishing a passage, Li Chuan stopped and looked at the old woman, saying, "Yes, it's just that the text in this book seems to be ancient seal script, and I have many that I can't recognize. I can only try reading it a few times to see if I can understand its meaning." The old woman stared at him for a while before asking again, "Can you really understand?" Li Chuan collected the book and said frankly, "I can only understand 1 or 2% now. When I go home, I will check the meaning of each word and read it a few more times, and I estimate I will understand everything. After all, as the master said, reading 100 times reveals its true meaning. The old woman nodded imperceptibly. Li Chuan breathed a slight sigh of relief. If the fox believed his words, it could delay for a while, and perhaps even help him get rid of the public and escort him home. When he arrived home, he used the excuse of searching for information and went around to study, so there was always a chance to escape. But he didn't expect that the next second, the old woman's face suddenly enlarged in front of him. In the firelight, deep and shallow wrinkles wriggled like worms, red hair sprouted one by one. Gong Er noticed something was wrong and flew over with a pounce. The old woman glanced sideways and saw Gong Er tilting his head and landing on the ground. The chicken feathers fell all over the ground. A fragrant and foul-smelling heat rolled over Li Chuan's face. The fox's mouth opens and closes. The old woman's voice echoed, constantly beating his eardrums. Tell me. Tell me, what is written in the book? What? Li Chuan heard his own voice, mechanically stiff, bouncing out word by word. Wen Jing. Just as the title was spoken, I saw a golden light gushing out of his body, hitting the old woman against the wall. Pop. The fox has revealed its prototype. A pair of fox eyes still stared fixedly at Li Chuan. The rain is still falling. Thunder and fire intertwined together. Li Chuan stood up, took 2 steps outside, then turned around and returned, grabbed Gong Er, and charged towards the outside of the temple. If you don't bring the second son, the third son will definitely not run with him. He is a weak scholar, and in such weather, he cannot run far on his own. Soaking in the water, Bien San also noticed the abnormality in the temple and immediately grew bigger when he saw their appearance. Li Chuan jumped onto the crab shell, grabbing the crab whiskers with one hand and holding Gong Er with the other, saying, "Let's go." The thunder echoed incessantly. The rain soaked through his hair and clothes, and Li Chuan felt the rooster in his hand move. The chicken's neck trembled, the chicken's eyes blinked, opened, and then the drooping chicken crown stood up again. The feathers are soaked through. After understanding the current situation, Gong Er turned his head and leaned back. Boom! The silver snake danced, and in the surging sea of trees, a red-haired fox jumped into the air, kicking its front foot with its hind foot and stepping on the sound of thunder, rushing towards them. Bien San also began to accelerate. Li Chuan discovered that the fox's running speed was not as fast as the other 3, but it would jump once every time it ran a dozen steps, jumping forward several meters in one go, gradually bringing the distance closer. The rain blurred Li Chuan's vision, distorting everything he saw. Electric light flashed by. The bright red and shiny fur, sharp and pitch-black claws, as well as the flat wound of the broken ear, were pieced together by the rain curtain to create a dazzling scene, which was reflected in Li Chuan's eyes, getting closer and bigger. He wanted to wipe away the rain from his face, but couldn't make it. At this moment, Gong Er moved again, and Li Chuan felt a strong slap on his chest, pushing him into mid-air. When he fell, he saw Gong Er flying with big wings towards the fox, while Bien San, at some point, changed to his original size and grabbed Gong Er's chicken feet. Bang! Li Chuan fell to the ground. I feel a chill all over. The ground had already been soaked in rainwater and was extremely muddy. Li Chuan propped his hands on the ground, panting heavily, and his stomach churned. With a "wow" sound, he vomited out. The undigested meat patties mixed with gastric juice fell into the muddy water, emitting an unpleasant odor. On the other side, Gong Er and Bien San are fighting against the fox. Gong Er pounced and slapped the fox's face, quickly twisting his body and grabbing the back of the fox's neck. His 2 wings fiercely and quickly patted the fox's head, while his chicken beak fiercely pecked at the heavenly cover. Bien San hid behind Gong Er, his body not getting bigger. His 8 legs pierced deeply into the fox's fur, stabilizing his body. His 2 large pliers became as big as a basin, biting the fox's two forelimbs tightly. At this moment, Li Chuan spat out the last two mouthfuls of sour water, feeling a little more comfortable. After wiping his face, he saw the fox shake its head and vigorously shake it a few times, but did not shake off Gong Air and the other three. Then the fox stood up with its hind legs, lifted its upper body, and let out a growling sound in its mouth. Bang! A huge black fox shadow seemed to rise from behind the fox. Then, a fierce rooster crow was heard, and Gong Air and Bien San were bounced away. The fox's paw leaned back and grabbed one of Gong Air's wings. Bien San landed not far in front of Li Chuan like a rag. The wipers are brushing and falling. Li Chuan saw the crab shell on the third side crack open from the middle, oozing out a greenish-yellow mucus. One of the pliers fell off, and the crab legs twisted into a strange shape. Gong Air, who fell into the fox's hands, was even more miserable, with his neck crooked and half of his wings bald. However, his momentum remained undiminished, and he pecked at the fox as he saw the opportunity. Li Chuan felt as if the fox had glanced at him. His heart tightened. He knows that after solving the second year of public service, he will be the next one. Li Chuan doesn't want to die. He doesn't want to die here. My whole body was soaked through, and my clothes stuck to my body, making me feel heavy and unbearable even when I moved. He slowly moved to the side of the third person. The fox asked me for the book I found by the stream. His voice was hoarse and there was a smell of blood in his throat. The cold rain flowed down from his forehead and landed on his hand, and he clenched his hand. It can't read. You take me running, it will let go of Brother Gong. There is a cliff not far away, I want to give it a try. The other three remain motionless. When Li Chuan thought that Bien San had passed out, the eyes of the two crabs suddenly moved, and then Bien San's body grew larger again. Li Chuan struggled to sit on the crab shell and lifted the book in his hand. One person and one crab quickly passed by the fox. Fox, the scholar is here. As expected, as Li Chuan said, when the fox saw it, it immediately shook off Gong Air and chased after Bien San. Gong Air fell to the ground crookedly. Bien San was injured, and the wound on the crab shell continued to expand. Li Chuan seemed to hear the sound of cracking shells. But his speed seems to be faster than before. Li Chuan crossed over and watched the fox's movements without blinking. Before each leap, the fox will shake its body slightly. Turn left, said Li Chuan. Without hesitation, Bien San immediately turned left. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Scholar, Drinking Medicine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Scholar, Drinking Medicine. When the fox sensed it, it had already run far ahead. It spun on the ground and chased towards Li Chuan in three directions again. Turn left. Turn left again. Turn right. Dot. After repeating this several times, the fox was left far behind. The fox lay on the ground, whimpering in its mouth, its eyes fixed on the crab and the scholar ahead. In the rain, the figures of the crab and the scholar became increasingly blurred and faded. A huge black fox shadow rose up behind the fox once again, and then it swooshed into the thick rain curtain. It's faster now. 50 meters. 30 meters. 20 meters. It's getting closer and closer. It shook its body and then heard the voice of the scholar, turn right. The scholar fell for a trick. The fox rose into the air, twisted its body in mid-air, and rushed forward. It will wait for the scholar and the crab ahead. Boom! Thunder resounded. The bright red fox jumped over a sea of trees that had been illuminated by electricity, and its body suddenly stiffened. Its limbs and claws began to scratch in mid-air, and it finally saw the scene below. It had unknowingly jumped off the cliff. But it's too late now. The fox fell down. Li Chuan breathed a slight sigh of relief. Just as he was about to stop Bien San, his crab leg tilted uncontrollably, and following the inertia, one crab and one person fell down. Li Chuan's heart suddenly calmed down. He listened to the sound of rain and wind, looked at the sky torn apart by lightning, and saw a fox colliding with the mountain wall, still unwilling to climb up with its paws scraping the soil. Close your eyes, maybe you can go back. Li Chuan closed his eyes. Then he heard the familiar thumping sound, and then something sharp grabbed his chest. He opened his eyes and saw Gong Er, who was bald, vigorously flapping his wings while muttering to himself, "If it doesn't work, it won't work. The scholar can't die, the scholar can't die." Bien San also transformed into a prototype and hung it on Gong Er's feet. Li Chuan felt like he smiled. At this moment, another hint of red flashed through the corner of his eye. What is that? Li Chuan turned his head to look. So he once again saw the flying sword adorned with a huge ruby, broke through the rain curtain, and flew towards the direction of the fox. Boom! The flying sword slashed on the mountain wall, causing debris to fall. Gong Er dragged Li Chuan and Bien San back to the cliff bit by bit. They only glanced at the other side of the mountain wall, and Bien San transformed into a prototype again, leading Li Chuan and Gong Er to flee without looking back. The rain gradually subsided. The roar kept coming from a distance. One person and two demons buried their heads and ran for a long time, only to stop near the nearest market. At this point, the rain has stopped. The sky began to turn white, and the first ray of sunlight lifted the clouds and landed on the ground. Li Chuan slid down from the crab shell. He is not doing well now, his clothes are still wet, the cold wind blows, and his whole body is cold, but there seems to be a fire rolling inside him, burning his eyes red and his internal organs burning. Scholar. Gong Er spoke first. Li Chuan was about to agree, but as he was about to open his mouth, his eyes turned black, his body softened, and he fainted on the ground. Vaguely, he seemed to hear some sounds. A scholar. Are you going to die, scholar? Scholars cannot die. Scholars cannot die. Doctor. Third brother, go find a doctor for him. Li Chuan felt like someone had carried him on his back. After a series of jolts, he heard many sounds, such as vendors shouting, arguments, children playing and frolicking, bells. Then he felt the hot and bitter liquid stirring his tongue and flowing into his body. It quieted down again. The body sinks in a warm and soft place. Second brother, are we still going to Xianshui Mountain? Of course, of course. What about the scholar? After a long time, Li Chuan heard the voice of Gong Er. This scholar is always sick and definitely not delicious. Let's search for other rare fruits on the way and offer them to the Black Horn King. After waking up, Li Chuan found himself sleeping on the bed, covered in a thin quilt, with the fragrance of herbs emanating from it. He lifted the blanket and walked out of bed, pushed open the door, and the sunlight flickered in his eyes. After blocking it with his hand, he saw a figure in the middle of the yard standing up straight towards him. After Lao Shaokai approached, Li Chuan finally saw his appearance clearly. He is particularly tall, estimated to be 1.9 meters tall, with a white face and a round face that looks like a boiled egg. Lao smiled and said, "Scholar, are you awake? How do you feel now?" Li Chuan moved his body for a while, and apart from fatigue, there seemed to be no other major issues. So he said, "Great, thank you very much for the doctor's treatment. What is the doctor's name?" Lao smiled and said, "My surname is Lao and my name is Xiao. Just call me Dr. Lao." Then, he asked Li Chuan in a deep voice, "Scholar, have you encountered something unusual?" Upon hearing this, Li Chuan felt a thump in his heart and quickly asked, "Doctor, what did you see?" Lao smiled and shook his head, sighing, "Fortunately, you have met me. If you encounter an ordinary doctor who suffers from the demonic energy entering your bones, you will most likely treat it as an ordinary wind cold. As time goes on, all your bones will be corroded by the demonic energy, and then it will be difficult for immortals to cure. Li Chuan's face changed when he heard the word demonic. Lao smiled and continued, the friend who brought you that day was supposed to give him a good warning, but he seemed to have something urgent on him. When he saw that you had recovered from your fever, he picked up a rooster and ran away, unable to stop shouting. The rooster was actually very robust and not like an ordinary thing. Li Chuan listened while observing the scene in the yard. There are some medicinal herbs on the ground, and grey stones are placed in the corners. Bamboo flags and poles are placed on top, with 5 big characters written. By Bu de Li Wan. After Lao Shao finished speaking, Li Chuan immediately said, Dr. Lao, save me. Lao smiled and said, there are 2 ways to treat this disease. I wonder which one you choose, scholar. Li Chuan asked, which 2? Lao laughed and said, one way is to relieve symptoms, which is relatively simple. I will prescribe a medicine for you. You only need to take it once a day for 7 to 40.9 consecutive days, and then take another medicine every 10 days. The symptoms will not recur. However, although the demonic energy is suppressed by the medicine, it will still have some effects on the body, such as dizziness and weakness. As long as you take it well, it will not affect your lifespan. Li Chuan said, no, I have to study and take exams. How can I deal with dizziness and weakness? What is the second treatment method? Lao smiled and looked embarrassed as he listened. The second treatment method, which can eliminate the root, is just. Just what? Li Chuan asked. Lao smiled and said, this prescription is a prescription from the 4 Gods' Palace. It was originally a defective prescription. In order to make up for it, my Shizu has visited all the famous doctors in the world. It can be said that the essence of medical skills of 100 or 200 years is in this prescription. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Scholar, Best Deception. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Scholar, Best Deception. Dr. Lao, save me. I will remember your kindness. When I win the imperial examination and become an official, I will definitely repay you well. Li Chuan said as he pretended to bow. Lao smiled and quickly supported him, saying, no. Li Chuan then reached out and grabbed his sleeve, Dr. Lao, please help me. Lao Shaokai felt that the time was almost right. He sighed and said, anyway, over the years, I've been traveling all over the country for this prescription, going through many hardships. Finally, last month, I found my last medicine. It seems like fate. It's your turn to get this medicine. As he spoke, Lao smiled and said with a solemn expression, Scholar, I see that you have great fortune. Today, I will save your life. In the future, you will have to do 90.9 and 80.1 good deeds to live up to my gift of medicine today. Li Chuan quickly replied, okay. Don't worry, Dr. Lao. I just have a clear conscience when I work on a daily basis. Lao smiled and nodded, saying, I gave you this medicine as a gift, but it hasn't been refined yet. This prescription is an immortal formula that requires the use of a fire cauldron and gold and stone. These expenses. Li Chuan immediately answered, of course, these expenses are small. As he spoke, he touched his body with a hint of embarrassment on his face. I don't have any money on me, so should Dr. Lao come back to Yunxiao Township with me and go to my house to get the silver. Although I am a poor scholar, I have saved 20 or 30 taels of silver in the past few years. If it's not enough, Li Chuan gritted his teeth. I will write an IOU and wait for it in the future. No need, Lao laughed and quickly interrupted Li Chuan, I still don't believe in your character. After chatting for a while, Lao smiled and saw that Li Chuan's face was tired. He said, Scholar, please go back to your room to rest. Later, I will make you a medicine to suppress yin qi. When you feel better, I will accompany you back to Yunxiao Township. After expressing gratitude, Li Chuan returned to his room. Lying in bed, pondering for a moment, Li Chuan suddenly burst out laughing. In the years when he skipped class and fought while wandering the streets, there were many people selling fake drugs on the side of the overpass. Wearing this unfamiliar world, the deceitful language is still the same. Li Chuan closed his eyes. The two little demons, Gong Er Bien San, are quite innocent. They probably believed him when they saw this boiled egg performing at the market. I don't know how many words he tricked me into. Li Chuan doesn't care about these things. What he cares about is that the world is too dangerous. This place is about 800 miles away from Yunqiao Township. What will he do if he goes back alone and encounters another monster? It's impossible for him to rely on himself, but following the scammers is different. Sure enough, as expected by Li Chuan, with boiled eggs leading the way, the distance of over 800 miles was both safe and comfortable. A few days later, Li Chuan and Lao Shao arrived at Yunqiao Township. After arriving in Yunqiao Township, Li Chuan deliberately took a detour to a crowded area. When encountering neighbors on the road, slow down, say hello, and chat a few words. When someone asked about Lao Xiaokai's identity, he said he was a friend he made while studying abroad. I walked to his residence around noon. That is a 3-bedroom dilapidated house with a yard behind it. Passing through the yard and crossing a slope is his 10-acre paddy field. Li Chuan respectfully welcomed Lao Shao into the room, washed the floor with water, wiped the tables and chairs, and then went to boil water. Lao smiled and quickly stopped him, saying, "No need, just click on it casually." Li Chuan said, "What you want, sir, is my savior." So Lao smiled and could only watch Li Chuan boil water and brew tea, busy with everything. After finally finishing his work and having a cup of tea, Lao Xiaokai finally saw Li Chuan enter the bedroom. Lao Xiaokai knew that Li Chuan had gone to get the money. When Bien San hugged Li Chuan and approached him, he immediately recognized that Bien San had become a fairy, and that big rooster was also a fairy. At first, he thought the scholar had been kidnapped by a fairy and decided to give them a few pills of medicine and send them away. As a result, I chatted with the other 3 and learned that they were in a hurry to go to Xianshui Mountain, while Li Chuan did not follow. Instead, he wanted to return to Yunqiao Township and was still a scholar. He works hard in the market every day, shouting and working hard. At the end of the day, he only earns dozens of copper coins. In order to catch up with the temple fair, his income can increase in those days. If he wants to get rich, he can only rely on a pair of eyes that discover wealth. For example, this poor scholar whose clothes are in tattered condition and have caused monsters. No matter how poor, and able to read, my family is still stronger than others. Moreover, as long as I pass the scholar entrance exam, I can receive 1 or 2 silver coins and 30 liters of rice per month. And he is young, looking in his early 20s. Many wealthy families like to make friends with these young scholars, and some are even willing to betroth their daughters to them. If one gets elected and becomes an official in the future, the whole family will also benefit from it. If you can't pass the exam, as long as you have a flexible mind and become a bookkeeper or master, you can also ensure a worry-free family. Lao smiled and thought as he scrutinized the decorations in the room. Although it may not be a family with nothing, there are not many valuable items, but the books placed on the shelf and the ink and paper used can be seen to be good. Li Chuan said he has 20 or 30 taels of silver, probably not deceiving him. If he were to use some more means, he might even be able to extract a few more taels. These 2 little demons threw themselves in front of him, destined for him to earn this silver. Moreover, he is not deceiving this scholar. Ordinary doctors really don't know how to treat this demonic wind cold, and the medicine he uses is also genuine. Just as I was thinking about it, I suddenly heard a sound of flipping boxes and cabinets in the bedroom, and then something fell to the ground. Lao Xiaokai quickly got up and walked towards the bedroom. Through the half-open door, he saw Li Chuan sitting on the ground with a dejected expression on his face. The dark grid at the head of the bed is open, and there is nothing inside. Lao smiled and walked over quickly, asking, "Xiaocai, what's wrong?" Li Chuan reluctantly lifted his head, his eyes blank, and murmured, "It's gone, the silver is gone. It must be some thief who took the money while I wasn't at home." As he spoke, he slowly stood up and stumbled step by step to the edge of the cage. He opened it and took out a few taels of silver and dozens of copper coins from the bottom, holding them and walking back to Lao Shaokai. Disappointed and disheartened, he said, "Sir, put it away. I can only take these out now. Let's use them as medical expenses for the next few days. If it's not enough, then what's in this room that Sir is interested in, just take it away." Lao Shaokai understood the meaning behind Li Chuan's words and pushed Li Chuan's hand holding the money out, saying, "I don't want your money." Then he said, "Scholar, how could you say such discouraging words? You're still so young and can read, but you've just lost some money. You'll just earn it back in the future. Why don't you have no wealth as a man? No more, no more, no more money, and my body has contracted a serious illness. Instead of dragging others down, it's better to go with a rope and have no worries." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Are there any monsters again? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Are there any monsters again? Lao smiled and advised for a long time, but Li Chuan still looked disheartened. Lao smiled for the first time and felt that his lips were useless. He looked at the broken silver in Li Chuan's hand and estimated it to be about 4 to 5 taels, gradually feeling a sense of retreat in his heart. Although we didn't make a big deal, with these 4 or 5 taels, it's not a loss to make such a trip. So in the end, he took the silver and said, "So, I'll leave a few pills here. When you feel uncomfortable, take 1 pill. If you understand, come find me again." After hearing this, Li Chuan nodded and said, "Thank you, sir." He then supported himself to get up and see him off. Lao smiled and looked at his expression, quickly saying, no need, you can rest." After finishing speaking, Lao Shao walked out and walked to the door. After thinking for a moment, he walked back and left dozens of copper coins on the table before leaving. After hearing the sound of the door closing, Li Chuan took a deep breath and walked outside. He saw the copper coins left by Lao Shaokai on the table. Smiled. Picking up the cold tea, he looked up and poured it into his stomach, then sat down. The scholar Li Chuan never saved 2 or 30 taels of silver, and the few taels of silver hidden in the cage were all the belongings he could take out. Although boiled eggs are a scammer, it is obvious that he also has some genuine products on him. Otherwise, it is impossible to say that he has been eroded by demonic power. Taking the prescribed patches of medicine has indeed made me feel much more comfortable. There is also the labor of escorting along the way. So medical fees and travel expenses need to be paid. Li Chuan poured himself another cup of cold tea and drank it. I estimate that after a while, the boiled egg will also regain its flavor. After walking about a mile, Lao Xiaochuan noticed something was wrong after asking for directions. He pinched the broken silver in his hand and pounded his chest and feet. Fighting geese all day long, the geese pecked their eyes, and even a scholar calculated. After arriving in Yunxiao Township, the scholar deliberately took a detour to let his neighbors know that he had returned, and even brought a good friend with him. In this way, even if he finds something wrong, it's not easy for him to go back and seek revenge. If you go back and kill the scholar to seize wealth, let alone whether the scholar has any wealth or not. His appearance has already been seen by people, and once he reports to the government, he will definitely not be able to escape. If we don't kill anyone, but rather expose the lies of the scholar, then he lied first and caused trouble. The scholar is a local, he is from another city, and he will definitely not be able to please. So Lao Xiaochuan clenched the silver in his hand. Forget it, let's go, let's go. The sun gradually slanted westward, and the light in the room became increasingly dim. It seems that boiled eggs will not come back to find him. Li Chuan stood up and moved his body. After arriving in this world, He only now has time to sort out his original memories and think about what to do in the future. The great Jiang dynasty experienced 4 emperors, and now there is an empress who has been in power for 48 years. At present, the situation is relatively peaceful, and there haven't been any major wars in the past 20 years. Although Yunqiao Township is located in a remote area, the climate is very good, with 4 distinct seasons and fertile soil suitable for cultivation. He takes good care of these 10 acres of land, and coupled with the fact that scholars do not have to pay taxes, there are monthly subsidies, so there is no need to worry about filling their stomachs. Li Chuan thought as he walked to the backyard and down to the edge of the field. Compared to the nearby ground, his land is noticeably sparse. I used to be an old servant, but I died last winter, and since then, the land has gradually become barren. A neighbor couldn't bear to see it, so they approached him and said they wanted to borrow his land because they didn't have to pay taxes, so they not only gave him rent, but also shared 30% of the harvest with him. As a result, Ginchen refused. Ginchen felt that this was a petty behavior and that he was a gentleman who could not associate with these petty people. The land is barren, the harvest is low, there is no money to support the body, there is no money to go to the school to study, I was tied up by 2 little demons and lost my life. Li Chuan thought and let out a long sigh. From his original memory, he knew that although there were demons in this world, ordinary little demons rarely went to crowded places. If it weren't for him living alone, his body would indeed be a bit weak. It would be quite difficult for Gong Er and Bien San to kidnap him. Monsters with some abilities, whether they are greedy for money or lust, usually choose wealthy families. As for big monsters like the Black Horn King, local governments revise new, big monster collections every year, which indicate the places occupied by these big monsters. When traveling, as long as you avoid the area occupied by the big demon and try to stay near the post station, it is still quite safe. Li Chuan had a plan in his heart. It's already past the sowing time now, and even if he is willing to rent out the land, he can't find anyone to rent it. He can only try to collect as much rice as possible. Wait until next year to see if anyone is willing to rent. After renting out the land, go out and find a job, such as the accountant. He can't do math Olympiad, adding and subtracting should be okay. After saving up some capital and becoming familiar with the world, let's see what business can be done. As for reading, he is not someone who is good at reading. It would be great if he could handle the annual exam once every 3 years based on his original memory. It is impossible for him to go any further. After calculating, Li Chuan's heart was settled, as if he could hear someone calling him from afar. Li Gongzi, Li Gongzi. Li Chuan walked around to the front of the house and saw Lu, the steward of Zhang Yuany's house, standing outside the front yard, shouting his name. Seeing Li Chuan come out, manager Lu quickly said, "Young Master Li, you have come back." Li Chuan invited him into the room. However, manager Lu waved his hand and refused, saying, "I won't sit anymore. The master is still waiting for me to reply." Then he explained his purpose. "During these days, our family has been haunted by demons, so we have invited a Taoist to handle the matter. Tonight, we are hosting a banquet and would like to invite Prince Li to accompany us." "Have you been bewitched?" Li Chuan asked. Manager Lu said, "Yes, that night, the food box that was delivered to the room outside the staff member was missing and couldn't be found anywhere. Soon after, a big rooster flew into the dining room, flapped its wings a few times, and swept all the freshly prepared dishes to the ground, even stomping on them several times with its paws." Li Chuan felt a bit familiar after listening. Lu Guanche continued, "Later on, strange things happened frequently. At night, everyone heard the cries of women and the sound of falling into the water. The outside staff found a few brave servants and together they took lamps and sticks, searched everywhere, but couldn't find anything." Manager Lu quietly glanced at Li Chuan's expression and said, "These past few days, things have become even more serious. During the day, everyone dare not close their eyes. Once they close their eyes, they can see the female ghost in red crying in the water. The development of this plot is a bit unexpected. Li Chuan asked Manager Lu, "Did you see it too?" Manager Lu said, "I saw that chicken. I even tugged on its wings with my hand, and my finger was injured. It still hurts a bit. As for the female ghost, I could vaguely hear some sounds." Li Chuan understood, most of the female ghosts and so on were just imagination. Then he is not afraid. "It's almost time for dinner, let's go grab some oil and water." So he said, "Just sit down for a moment and let me go and change my clothes." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Long time no see. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Long time no see. Li Chuan agreed happily, but Manager Lu was somewhat surprised. This poor scholar has been invited 10 times in the past, but not 9 times. Why did it suddenly change today? But he didn't ask. Before coming to Li Chuan's house, he went to several other reading households. When they heard that Zhang Yuany's house had been haunted, they all made excuses to refuse. On the way, he heard that Li Chuan had returned, so he came over with a try-on attitude. I didn't expect Li Chuan to agree. He doesn't want to turn back on his words just because of being talkative. Li Chuan didn't explain, just went back to the room to change clothes. When he took off his coat, he touched the book in his sleeve pocket. After thinking for a moment, he found a clean cloth, wrapped the book a few times, and then placed it at the bottom of the cage. Then he walked out of the house and followed Manager Lu towards Zhang's house. On the way, Li Chuan asked the steward Lu where the Taoist was invited by Zhang Yuany. Manager Lu replied, "He is a Taoist from the Four Gods Palace." The Four Gods Palace. Li Chuan thought of the recipe for boiled eggs, which is said to come from the Four Gods Palace. Is it another scammer? As Lu Guancher walked, he continued speaking on his own. This Four Gods Palace has a lot of origins. I've heard that immortals have appeared before, and they value the word fate. If it's not fate, even if it's 10,000 taels of gold, they won't take action. If it's fate, they won't even leave. This sounds more like a scammer. Lu Guancher continued, it's also because the old master usually does good deeds and accumulates virtues. When he is demonized, officials and others come to deal with him. If it's fast, it will take 3 or 4 months, and if it's slow, it can't be said that he won't be able to wait for a year. Even famous temples and Taoist temples not only have to wait, but also have to seek, and even if they do, they don't necessarily have to come. This time, it was a banker who helped him. The master saved him once a few years ago. One of his daughters is now working as a maid in the county magistrate's house. I heard that the landlord's house has been haunted by demons, and I also found out that the Taoist priest from the Four Gods Palace is a guest in the county government office. So I went to beg her mistress, and in this way, I tied the knot. After hearing the news, the Taoist pinched his fingers and calculated, saying that he had a connection with the Yuanwei family, so he came over today. Soon, I arrived at the home of Mr. Zhang. Manager Lu led Li Chuan through the corridor and walked all the way to the octagonal pavilion. There are 2 people sitting in the pavilion. One black and chubby, it was Zhang Yuanwei, and the other was dressed in a grey Taoist robe, handsome and elegant, obviously the Taoist from the 4 divine palaces. Upon seeing Li Chuan arrive, Zhang Yuanwei stood up and said, "You have arrived, my dear nephew. This is the one Wen Dao Chang from the 4 divine palaces." Li Chuan didn't hear what Yuan Zhang said later. He saw the sword tied around Wen Dao Chang's waist, with a large and dazzling ruby set on the hilt. And, very familiar. Li Chuan concluded that he is not a fraud. Li Chuan's silence made Zhang feel a bit embarrassed. He complained that Manager Lu didn't know how to find anyone, while thinking of saying a few words to make up for it. However, he didn't expect that when Dao Chang would take the initiative to say to Li Chuan, "I have heard of the outstanding people and land in Yunqiao Township." Today, upon seeing it, it was indeed so. At this moment, Li Chuan also came to his senses. He quickly retrieved a few beautiful sentence structures from his memory and said, "I've heard a lot about the 4 divine palaces all the way. At that time, I thought it was an exaggeration. It wasn't until I saw the Taoist priest that I realized I was too shallow." After a commercial exchange, the 3 of them sat down one by one, and Mr. Zhang ordered the dishes to be served. A bowl of stewed meat, a bowl of preserved chicken, a bowl of fresh fish, 3 or 4 types of vegetarian dishes, a few plates of fruits, and a full table. Finally, Manager Lu presented a pot of hot wine. After chatting about interesting rural stories for a while, Zhang Yuanwei said to Wen Guiying, "Master Wen, you've been staying at my house for half a day. What do you see?" Wen Gu should put down his chopsticks and look outside the pavilion, saying, "There are indeed traces of monsters appearing in this courtyard." Zhang asked, "So, what should we do?" Wen Gu should say, "I ask you, have anyone been injured or killed these days?" "No, no, no," Mr. Zhang immediately denied, saying, "Except for a fire maid in the kitchen who twisted her foot while catching a rooster, no one was injured." As the saying goes, that's right. He took a sip of wine and said, "Because you have done a lot of good things in the past and can also treat servants well, even though you have been demonized, the monsters cannot directly harm your and your family's lives for a while, and can only secretly erode your luck." "What will happen if our luck is eroded?" Zhang Yuanwei asked with concern. A review should say, "The house is restless, and people's hearts are scattered." For example, 2 people who already have some minor disagreements on a daily basis may normally be persuaded by others, or if someone wants to open up, they can lower their head first, give the other person a step, and the conflict will be resolved. But after being eroded by demonic power, it is different. No one is willing to lower their head, and when they see an opportunity, they will create obstacles for the other party. As a result, the feud deepens, and in the end, they will never die. The master will be strict with his servants, and servants will also calculate the property and life of the master. Even husband and wife may become enemies, father and son may turn against each other, and brothers may harm each other. At that time, even except for demons, everything can't go back to the past. Upon hearing this, Zhang Yuanwei's face showed a look of fear and he said, "What should we do?" Don't panic, I'm here." Zhang Yuanwei immediately said, "Taoist, help me." Taking advantage of the situation, he agreed and said, "Tonight, you and your family, servants will all go to other places to live. I will be here for a while, meeting this monster. Tomorrow, I will do another set of rituals to calm down the evil in my house, and it will be fine." Mr. Zhang asked, "Do you need to prepare anything for the preparation?" After pondering for a moment, Wen Gu said, "Just prepare some yellow paper cinnabar and water." Zhang Yuanwei responded one by one and said many grateful words. Li Chuan listened to the conversation between Zhang Yuanwei and Wen Guiying, and only came out to echo a few words when necessary. The rest of the time, he was eating seriously. "I have been camping for half a month, and I don't know when it will be for my next meal of meat. Moreover, when eating, it is important to pay attention to etiquette and avoid saying things like, Li Xiuzai looks ugly when eating, his mouth full of meat, and he can't even speak. After that, no one will call him to eat anymore." Li Chuan suddenly heard Wen Gu and called out to him. "Brother Li." Li Chuan slowly raised his head, swallowed the meat in his mouth, and then said, "Do you have any instructions from Master Wen?" As the saying goes, tonight, Brother Li and I will work hard to stay overnight. Then, Li Chuan saw Zhang Yuan's pleading gaze towards him. Li Chuan agreed, "Okay, but I'm used to reading at night. I need to light more candles in my room and prepare some food." Zhang breathed a sigh of relief and immediately said, Okay. Don't worry, Taoist Li Xian niece. If you need anything, just speak up and do your best. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Kill two birds with one stone. When Wengu proposed to ask Li Chuan to watch the night together, Li Chuan realized that this Taoist must have seen something in him. I don't know if I realized he wasn't the same Li Chuan as before, or if I just noticed that he had been dealing with chicken demon Gong Air. Li Chuan is very calm. Time travel is not his wish. Being bound by monsters was not his initiative. Even if you see that he is not yourself, then if you have the ability, exchange it and send him back to modern times. He returned to the construction site and immediately sculpted a golden body for the Taoist, offering a flame-melting ruby every month. You just need to see that he has dealt with monsters. That would be even better. Please ask the Taoist to help eliminate the erosion of demonic power. It would be even better if you could give some medicine to strengthen your body. After dinner, Mr. Zhang and his family moved to another place, leaving only Li Chuan and Wen Guiying in the large house. Two people are guarding the side hall. It's all dark now, and both indoors and outdoors are eerily quiet. Only the ruby on the hilt, reflecting the light of the candle, shines particularly brightly in the dark night. Li Chuan saw his face reflected on the gemstone, with thick eyebrows, big eyes, and a wide face. It was both familiar and unfamiliar, younger and thinner than his face in memory. Turns out he looks like this now. Li Chuan shifted his gaze and said, "Will that chicken demon really come tonight?" Wen Guiying smiled and said, "Isn't Brother Li the clearest about this?" Li Chuan smiled and said, "A few days ago, I did encounter a chicken demon and a crab demon. They bound me and wanted to give it to the Black Horn King of Xianshui Mountain to eat." Wen Guiying's face showed an unexpected expression and said, "On that day, I saw Brother Li riding on a crab, and the chicken demon cut off the tail for you. I thought these two little demons were Brother Li's demon servants. Surprisingly, Brother Li was kidnapped." Upon hearing Wen Guiying's words, Li Chuan understood that he had only seen himself with Gong Air Bien Sen a few days ago, rather than realizing that his body had changed its core. Li Chuan was somewhat disappointed. He briefly recounted the process of being kidnapped, encountering a fox demon, and finally escaping from the mortal world. "Finally," he said, "just now, when I saw the sword of the Taoist, I understood that it was the Taoist who saved Xiaoka's life that day. It was just the incident of being kidnapped by the demon, and it was not easy to speak to others. Therefore, I did not recognize the Taoist at the dinner table just now." Upon hearing this, Wen Guiying was somewhat surprised and said, "I didn't expect Brother Li to look weak and rely on his intelligence to escape from the hands of monsters. He's amazing, amazing." Li Chuan said, "Those two little demons must have just opened their minds, that's why they were fooled by me. As the saying goes, Brother Li doesn't need to be humble. When an ordinary person sees a monster and panics, even if they have a lot of strength, they only have 3 points left. Brother Li's calm demeanor shows that he will have great potential in the future." Li Chuan fell silent for a moment. The scholar Li Chuan was scared to death. He said, "When I'm scared, I think about what else I can do in this situation. Once I focus on what I can do, I'm not afraid anymore." Upon hearing Li Chuan's words, Wen Guiying was taken aback for a moment before suddenly thinking of something and asking, "Did you just say you saw a fox holding a book?" Li Chuan nodded and said, "Yes." "So can you see the title of the book?" Li Chuan admitted honestly and said, "Yes." "What is the title of the book you saw?" Li Chuan replied, "The title of the book is Wen Jing." Then, he saw Wen Guiying nod his head and show the same expression on his face, saying, "So that book chose you." Seeing Li Chuan bewildered, Wen Suo explained to him, that red-haired beast pretended to come to the Four Gods' palace to listen, but took advantage of the shift change in the library to sneak in and steal the book. That's why I chased after this book all the way here. Originally, it was a collection of books from the Four Gods' palace. Li Chuan was very polite and said, "Before I came out today, I changed my clothes and left the book at home. Tomorrow morning, I will go back to get the book and return it to the Taoist priest. He has no ideas about that book. Firstly, he is a scumbag. Secondly, there must be many people coveting the books in the four gods' palace. He really doesn't want to deal with demons and monsters anymore. Unexpectedly, when Guiying said, those who were not destined to receive this book, after reading it, it is just a nameless heavenly book. If you can see the title of the book, it means that you are destined to receive it, and you should have received it. Then, he explained the origin of this book to Li Chuan. The classic of patterns, is said to be written by the ancient immortal Tian Su. He believed that patterns were the fundamental image of all things in heaven and earth. By mastering patterns, one can gain the power of all things. Li Chuan became even more scared as he listened. He quickly took out his identity as a scholar and put it to use. I am a scholar who aspires to take exams and become an official. This book is like a jewel in the dust with me. Please take it back with you, Taoist one, and wait for the next destined person. Wen Gu should quietly look at Li Chuan for a while and ask, brotherly, what are you worried about? Taoist, I'm afraid of death, said Li Chuan calmly. On a moonless night, it was very dark, and the wind blew in waves. The shadow of the candle swayed on the face of Wen Guing. Li Chuan laughed when he saw him and said, brotherly, rest assured that although the book, Wen Jing, is precious, it will not attract others to snatch it. Li Chuan looked at Wen Guiying with confusion. Wen Guiying stood up and brought the food prepared by Zhang Yuanwei to the table like before. He divided the cups and poured the wine. He said, come on, have some food, let's talk slowly. Between eating and drinking, Wen Gu should explain, there are currently 17 recorded descendants of the Wen Jing, all of whom have a lifespan of over 80 and have a good ending. It should be said that in the book Wen Jing, very few people can see the characters on it. It is said that due to the obscure and difficult to understand characters, even if they see the characters, even fewer people can understand their meanings and apply them. Among the 17 recorded descendants, only a few have learned the technique of repairing damaged patterns, while no one has learned the technique of using the power of all things. Li Chuan nodded as he listened. The part he had previously reviewed was about how to repair the patterns, and there were indeed many characters on it that he couldn't recognize. The story continued, as cultivators, we seek to ascend to immortality and attain enlightenment. However, the descendants of the Wen Jing, although highly respected, have no connection to the eternal life of the Tao. That red-haired beast, if he knew he had stolen such a book, might have thrown it aside and fled for his life long ago. Li Chuan listened with peace of mind as he spoke truthfully about the past. After breathed a sigh of relief, Li Chuan asked, where is the fox now? Wen Gu should say, I stabbed him to death with one sword, cleaned up his fur, and sold him 10 taels of silver at the market. Wen Gu should pat Li Chuan's shoulder and say, brotherly, should you feel at ease now? End of this chapter.